Mets on the Just Baseball show, live on X, live on YouTube. You can watch on SportsGrid. You can listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And we want to talk about guys that got off to slow starts that are starting to heat up as the weather heats up. Allegedly, we're 2 days into summer. I thought summer started like 3 weeks ago, to be honest with you. I think summer is a mindset. It's not necessarily a date on the calendar, but society would like to pigeonhole you into believing that summer starts on June 21st. But who are guys that had a good end of the spring and the beginning of summer? We'll talk about those guys. Of course, the Just Baseball show is presented by BetMGM. Jack McMullen, Aram Leighton, Peyton Genas. Do you subscribe to the idea that summer is a mindset and it's not a date?
Well, especially being in Florida, like it's already been hot for like a month and a half now, 2 months. So to me, it's always kind of been that mindset. And it was always just a kind of the shift into, for me, it was always school. So once I was out of school, I felt like it was a summer, and I'll always just kind of associate those dates with it. So I do agree with that.
Okay. Yeah. And what Kenny Chesney says, summertime all the time. That's his thing.
Oh yeah. Nice. Must be nice.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think he's also the No Shoes Nation guy. But we got to talk about guys that got off to slow starts that are starting to heat up right now, and maybe for an elongated stretch. And I understand this team has been incredibly frustrating and struggled mightily over the course of the year to this point, but they are putting together an outfield that looks really good, not only for the future, but for the present as well. Juan Soto is a superstar for the New York Mets. We know that Juan Soto is a top 5 hitter in Major League Baseball. Every single year he will be for the next 10. AJ Ewing looks like a heck of a young center fielder. Ewing can go get it with the best of them right now. He flies, and man, can he hit. But the guy that we want to talk about to kickstart this conversation that'll take up the front half of the show is Carson Bench of the New York Mets. Now, Bench homered on opening day. Bench, after that, went into this cold spell that lasted about a month, and we're saying, does he need a reset in Syracuse? The answer was, heck no, he doesn't. Carson Bench, over his last bit, has been absolutely outstanding. In his last 50 games, hitting .293 with an OPS over 800. He's driven in 25. He has 7 homers in that stretch. Bench is a guy that you loved, Aram Leighton. You had inside your top 20 prospects in baseball at the beginning of the year. How is Bench broken out of that early slump that he found himself in?
I just feel like for him, he's such a rhythm-based hitter, and there's some moving parts to his swing, but he always has such a good feel for the barrel that I just think he got a little bit out of rhythm, and even just toning some minor things down a little bit for him, I think has gone a long way. He's just too good of a hitter to not have found his stride. And I think what we're also seeing now too is just the different ways that he can succeed. I mean, we've seen the 3-hit days where he's just spraying kind of softly hit, but line drives all over the yard. And then we see the days where he gets into a couple more advantage counts and he lets it eat a little bit more. But, I think we've seen that big leg kick that he likes to utilize, and he still is utilizing it, but there's more rhythm to it. There's times where it was kind of into a toe tap, into a leg kick. I think the movements where when you're in the minor leagues, if you have some variance to your own timing, you can get away with it a little bit more. I think in the big leagues, like, you have to control your own timing already because these pitchers are going to be so good at getting you out of that. And I feel like he's found the exact moves that work for him and that he can repeat. And as a result, I mean, he has been fantastic. And it's what I always liked about him as a prospect is you've got the sneaky power, you've got the great feel to hit, and then you marry that with a good approach. It's like, this guy is too well-rounded to not be solid. And then when he's right, you see all those things start to shine through. And I think that's what we've been seeing over the last 50 games.
It's been really fun to watch Carson Bench. And as we start to play the 5-year game, you see consistency in the outfield for the New York Mets. And listen, they have a whole bunch of issues that they got to deal with, right? They got to figure out what's going on at first base with Polanco and Vientos. It's just not an answer right now. Semien at second base, unfortunately, just not an answer for them. Bichette was starting to heat up. Bichette is an interesting case where you're financially tied to him and he could opt in and you call it a poison pill contract. Like, that's what it could be. Or he could rake and opt out and he's out of the equation and he's looking for a 5 or 6 year deal. They have pitching things that they got to sort through. But it's cool to look at the Mets and in a year that has been littered with problems, say, I don't really think the outfield's a problem anymore. Like, that has to be nice to put your head on the pillow as a Mets fan and think about.
That's a great consolation prize in what's been this disaster-ish season for them. And I think that's what we've talked to Ryan Finkelstein about it, and our managing editor and also, host of Locked On Mets and also one of the co-hosts here. And he says, "That's the only thing that gets me up for every
Yeah.
game. I get to watch Ewing and Benj roam around in the outfield." And I think there's a lot to be said there. And it's funny with the ebbs and flows that Benj has had a little bit, and I think it's mostly been, positive through majority of it. It's just the bad was so bad. It was the 0 for whatever streak. He's going to finish this year unless he has another, weird tough stretch, which I just don't think is going to happen, as like a 3+ win rookie that played all three outfield spots. And that's the other interesting thing that I think through the year with Benj is that when he had to fill in center field as well for a handful of games, he was pretty solid out there too. So you also found out, and I always thought that Benj could play a solid center field, but now you saw that at the big league level, like this is a guy that can play really solid corner, can also fill in center. You're not going to need that presumably with Ewing, but just to know that you have multiple guys that can play all three spots as well,
Yeah.
that do tools across the board and can impact the game in so many different ways, I think sets the Mets up really nicely with those two moving forward as well. And then, of course, Soto, we don't need to talk about that guy.
Right. Pivot to the American League West. Next guy that I want to talk about here is Wyatt Langford of the Texas Rangers. Langford was off to a somewhat slow start to his season. Wyatt Langford then hit the shelf with a forearm strain, and he was on the shelf for about 6 weeks. He came back after being removed at the end of April, at the beginning of June. And Langford has played 16 games since coming off the injured list. And Wyatt Langford, in those 70 plate appearances across 16 games, hitting 297 with a 951 OPS, 5 homers, and 12 RBIs. On Monday night in Miami, it snapped a stretch of 4 consecutive games with not only multiple hits, but an extra base hit in those 4 consecutive games. This guy has as much pure talent as
Mhm.
any young outfielder in Major League Baseball. When we talk about Chorio, when we talk about other guys, Julio Rodriguez in the outfield, in terms of the next wave of star talent in the outfield, Merrill, Michael Harris comes to mind as well. Wyatt Langford is in that conversation. Now, the injured list has been kind of a mainstay for him.
Mhm.
He's been there several times in 25 and now in 26. But when Langford's on the field, his talent's undeniable. And we are seeing one of the best stretches of Wyatt Langford's very young career.
I think what we're seeing too is a reminder that he's 24 years old. You mentioned he's battled some injuries and flew through the minor leagues. So 2024 was kind of this rush to the big leagues, sink or swim opportunity. And at 22 years old, he was really good, right? He was a 3-1 player. He was 11% above league average offensively. And then 2023 or 2025, excuse me, at 23 years old, not only does he get better offensively, and I think the tough part with him is you mix in some minor injuries, and then you also mix in just some ups and downs. He's been streaky as well, and I'm sure the injuries and coincide with that. That I think people forget that at the end of the season, he was a 4-win player in the eyes of F4 last year, 22 homers, 22 bags. The other part is through that, he is developed into a great defender, whether it's in a corner or center field. And that's the area too. Like he graded out as an above average center fielder last year. And if you could say by like per 100 innings, he was closer to plus. So that part of his game developing, I think, is absolutely huge and is translated early going into this year as well. I think he's just had these ups and downs. And I feel like with him, we're seeing, I think that the ups be a little bit more consistent when he's healthy. And I just want to see him stretch it out now. And that's what I'm excited to see is like, can we see him maintain this over a larger sample? And now that he's healthy and back, I think that's going to be the thing to monitor. And I think he will. I think the rest of the way this year is going to be him kind of making the statement that, hey, I'm one of the more talented young players in Major League Baseball. And I really believe he is.
They got to get healthy. They also have to, outfield wise, experience an upturn from a different guy when he does come off the injured list. Like, first and foremost for Texas, if they are going to make a run in a pretty weak American League West, Seager needs to clear all of these hurdles that he's dealing with. He's on the concussion IL right now. It seems like he's in the final stages of return to play. So we'll see what Seager can do. But Wyatt Langford needs an Evan Carter. And Carter, it's just been very disappointing at the outset of his career. And you hope that he can turn it around when he does come off the shelf. We've got about 30 seconds left in this segment. We can tie a bow on Langford real quick. But how does a guy like Evan Carter bounce back from what's been a slow start to his major league career?
Man, I think him too. I think health is a big part. That back issue is pretty serious. But I also think it's just kind of getting back to what made him so good in the minor leagues. And I think that was approach and bats a ball.
Yep. All right. So Wyatt Langford has been awesome since coming off the IL. Another guy in the American League when we come back.
Hey there, it's your buddy Craig Carton. If you're trying to find out how to get all the great content that me and Tyrone Johnson give you every single day, here's Tyrone to tell you how.
You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and of course, Amazon Music as well. We're at all four.
That's right. It's the Craig Carton Show podcast every weekday morning live at 11, replayed at noon on YouTube and on SportsGrid throughout the country. Check it out.
Pitching has been really good in their bullpen too. So Chris Getz, their general manager, credit to him. This guy was getting pounded a couple of years ago for decisions and everything like that, but man, it is seemingly working out. The fans, by the way, all of a sudden are pouring in there. Their attendance is on the rise too. So a great sign that the White Sox are in this thing. Now, long term, I don't know. Like, is this a postseason team? Is it a deep postseason team?
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Are you ready for el verano más futbolero de tu vida? Latination Football Club turns into Copa Nation, our live stream experience every day, de lunes a viernes, 11 a.m. Pacific and 2 p.m. Pacific as well. Checking in after the games. In that slot between games, we got you, my friend. We're going to have celebrities, legends of the game, content creators, and a bunch of our friends that are going to keep you entertained and informed, letting you know what's happening all across the 3 countries that are going to be experiencing this crazy, crazy football tournament. Don't miss it. Copa Nation right here on Latin Nation every day. Check it out.
Just Baseball Show continues. Of course, it is brought to you by BetMGM. Another guy in the American League we want to talk about after we just hit on Carson Benj and Wyatt Langford shaking off slow starts this year and really heating up as of late. Jack Caglione, that is the name of the game for the Kansas City Royals outfielder. Caglione has been awesome in the month of June, and that's on the heels of a really rough month of May. This guy played 27 games in May, hit .222 with a .640 OPS. But in 19 games in the month of June, Caglione's hitting .357 with 7 homers, 16 driven in, and an 1144 OPS. Caglione is starting to tap into exactly who we thought he could be offensively. And he's doing it in a way that seems a bit safer than what I was anticipating personally. I think you and I were both like kind of watching what he did at Florida and seeing the swing and miss numbers and saying this might get really ugly at points. K rate's right around 25% in June. That would be awesome to see him sustain that, no?
That was the big thing that I felt like I pushed back on. The sheer swing and miss was not the issue as much as I thought just the approach was. And I think that was, as I always try to like lay out the case of like, this guy is better bat to ball than I think you would expect from somebody with his power. It's just he takes himself out of ABs because he was swinging at everything. And we saw that, ridiculous even in college, but he could get to everything in college and hit anything out. But then in the early going in his pro career, like that was something that started to rear its head a little bit. And so him even just cutting the chase rate from like north of 40 to below that, I think helped in a big way as well. And I think now just that as well, like being a little bit more selective has helped and his approach has helped. And I think just settling in general. This is another player that you got to remember, like flew through the minor leagues, learned a new position, and I feel like did not get the same level of patience maybe than some other players would maybe get. I think it's kind of like, hey, this guy is supposed to be the big power guy. This is supposed to be our guy. Supposed to be our guy. And I get it. It was really bad last year, but he was thrown into the fire. And for a player of that archetype, I don't see guys like that succeeding and being rushed. Usually you're going to be a little bit more station to station. So I just think understanding that it has not been that many professional games for him. A reminder, like he played the end of 24, he played 29 games at high A. That's where we saw the aggression kind of rear its head a little bit. And then in 25, it was 38 games in double A, 28 games in triple A, and then straight to the shell. So, I mean, he has already played, if I have the math right, just about as many major league games as he's played minor league games. And I don't think it's a coincidence that as he's met that mark now, you're starting to see him settle in. It's 80 grade raw power, like we've always talked about, but it was two things. It was Is the approach going to do you in? And then also, is the approach / swing path going to limit you from being able to get into that power enough? Because sometimes it would be flatter. I think you're seeing him get into that power more consistently, and you're seeing his approach not undermine him. Even if he's still going to be relatively aggressive, as long as he's not, top 10% in chase rate, he's going to be able to get to enough, I think, to be the productive hitter that he's been, and we're seeing that.
And can I tell you, the most important pitch for Jack Caglione this year is 0-0. It's the first pitch of every plate appearance, and I'll give you some numbers to attach to that. Jack Caglione on the first pitch of at-bats so far this year, he has put 44 of them in play. He has 21 hits in 43 at-bats. So he's hitting 488 on the first pitch with 4 homers. He's got a 1337 OPS on the first pitch of at-bats. Now, if he gets ahead 1-0, he's hitting about 300 with a 980 OPS, and 6 other homers have come after he gets ahead 1-0. If he falls behind 0-1, he's hitting 171 and he's slugging 265. The first pitch is the deciding pitch for Caglione over the course of at-bats. If you put it in play, he's going to hit it hard. If he doesn't put it in play and he falls behind 0-1, if he takes a strike or if he swings and misses, the at-bat totally skews in pitcher favor because you can go to secondaries, you can get out of the zone, and that's where the chase can kind of rear its head, especially left on left. So, this could be a bulk platoon bat, but that's fine. It's just fascinating to see those splits and say, you know what might behoove you is be a lot like Corey Seager and just swing at the first pitch all the freaking time.
Yeah, and then I think now he's gotten to the point, too, where, it can keyhole it a little bit where, hey, if they know that and they're going to try to get me to get myself out, I'm not going to chase as much. And I think that's where you're seeing the maturity shine through. And then one slight, just small mechanical thing is I think he's just moving a little bit less. There was some kind of late hand movement there. It seems like he's a lot more still. And I think that's allowing his timing to be more consistent, him to see the ball longer. And I don't think it's a coincidence that over the stretch, he is demolishing changeups, he's demolishing breaking balls, and he's staying back on those pitches because I think he's deciding later, and he's not moving so late as well with those hands and starting, I think, a little bit more stacked and coiled onto the backside. Little adjustments for guys like that can make all the difference in the world. I just talked about it with Bryce Eldridge, and that piece will be live on justbaseball.com today.
Love it. Tyler Soderstrom of the A's is who we want to talk about next. Tyler Soderstrom was awesome last year, and you understand why the A's handed him a big-time extension. Soderstrom was a Gold Glove winner, had 25 homers last year. Got off to this really slow start. But Soderstrom in the month of June has OPS'd over 1,000, and Soderstrom has been awesome. In his last 30 games, he's hitting .330 with a 1093 OPS, 8 homers, and 21 driven in. This guy is a massive piece of what the A's are building in that young core that's headed to Vegas. You might be priced out of Kurtz by this point. I would not blame Nick Kurtz for not entertaining anything, but of the extensions that they've handed out, you probably feel safest with Jacob Wilson, but this one may be the most exciting, in my opinion.
It's funny, too, because I think there was some just question in the beginning where it's okay, this guy's going to have to really, really, really hit because it was the converted catcher to more first base. How's the defense going to grade out in the outfield? And we saw him win a Gold Glove last year. This year, good in the DRS department, not great in the OA department. I'll say in aggregate, still probably a solid defender out there. The funny thing is he started really slow, and it really almost feels like that was a fever dream because then you look at the season-long numbers, and last year's great season was a 125 WRC plus. This year's slow started season is a 121. So he's 4% off of where he was at last year. He's on pace to hit more homers, slightly, maybe by a couple. But given how he's ticked up now, he could beat that by a good amount. He's upped his walk rate by 4%. He's cut his strikeout rate by 4%. It's I think the lines, everything's kind of lining up here for Soderstrom to end up having a better season than he had last year. And sometimes you got to work through that slow start and get through there. And I think that's the part that is exciting with Soderstrom is you had this kind of breakout year last year. You have this slow start, and you already see him correcting it. And even through the slow start, there was a lot of reasons to believe that things would get better. This is a really good player. I think that contract is going to continue to age well. And another player that it's easy to forget, he's still just 24 years old. So the best days of Tyler Soderstrom could continue to be ahead. I'm most encouraged by what we've seen from the strikeout rate. I mean, remember, in his big league debut, in 138 plate appearances, he struck out 31% of the time. That has consistently gone down every single time we check in.
Yep, just amazing. All right, we keep on pushing when we come back on the Just Baseball Show. JB Show continues. One guy real quick, and I want to spend the majority of this segment on another. Alec Bohm of the Philadelphia Phillies, I want to talk about, because Bohm was one of the worst hitters in baseball for the first month and a half of the season. Since he was benched at the beginning of May, thank you, P, for identifying that date. Peyton tells us he's hitting 290 with an 832 OPS, 8 homers, and 26 driven in over that stretch. Now, Bohm's season-long numbers still don't look that awesome, but as the Phillies surge and as they start to look like World Series contenders and legit buyers again, Bohm has done some lifting for them. Not necessarily the heavy lifting, because that is still reserved for Schwarber, Harper, Marsh. But while Trey Turner has continued to be incredibly disappointing, and while Rio Muto has continued to be incredibly disappointing, Bohm is starting to get better and better and better. And this is nice if they want to flip him. They don't have the ability to flip him, I don't think, because of the injury issues for Aiden Miller.
Mm-hmm.
So you rely on Bohm playing third base for them through an October run, and I think you're pretty happy with that right now.
Yeah, I think so. And it's been one of the more impressive turnarounds that I can remember. Going from, comfortably one of the worst hitters in the league, if not the worst, to be as productive as he's been. Just to show you how bad it has been, or it was before, is like most of these guys that we've talked about, like their hot stretches got them over league average numbers. Alec Bohm's still at a 77 WRC plus. So, credit to him. And I think it's important to note, like, guy was dealing with a lot of BS off the fields before the season started, stuff that you don't even fathom anybody would have to deal with. Right. I can't imagine that didn't affect him at the start of this season, as much as I don't think his game translates into maximum value at third base, whatever it may be. He's been roughly a league average hitter in his career, and he's been above average hitter over the last 3 seasons. So it's I think that had to play a part into it. And then I think I can't imagine struggling on the field, dealing with stuff off the field feels like you never escape it, I'm sure. So just seeing him pick up here, I think that has to be a part of it. And then I think also it has been huge for this Phillies lineup that at the start of the year we said, it's like, who is going to lengthen this thing outside of the superstars? And for Alec Bohm to just even be close to league average, I think is going to make a huge difference for them. So I think him picking up has been a big deal. And even if he's just 100 WRC plus the rest of the way, which he's been far better than over this stretch, I think it just helps lengthen this lineup to where you don't have this catastrophic drop-off.
Yeah. Next guy that I want to spend the majority of this segment on is Brian Reynolds of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Reynolds has been awesome and one of the better players this year that nobody's really talking about right now. When Oneil Cruz was healthy for the Pittsburgh Pirates, it was all about Cruz. But this year, Brian Reynolds has been great. Reynolds hitting 287 with an 884 OPS over 78 ball games. And Brian Reynolds was on an on-base streak lasting more than 20 games. Reynolds so far in the month of June has been absolutely phenomenal. Reynolds so far in June, it's 18 games hitting 319 with an OPS over 1,000 and 11 extra base hits. What do you make of Brian Reynolds' kind of career resurgence so far this year? Is it just a byproduct of way more lineup protection?
I was going to say that has to be my best guess, because just having better bats all the way around him has to be making a big difference. I mean, after the 2021 season that he had, where he's 40% above league average, he continued to be productive after that. But I think there was a reason why we saw the walk rate drop down and the strikeout rate kind of climb a little bit. Is like, that's the guy. And he was the guy in that lineup, and it's just, I feel like there had to be points and times where he just felt like he wasn't going to see a ton to hit, and he started to expand more and whatever it may be. I do think just having the bats around him that he has to be making a huge difference. And I think that the numbers would back that up. And I think now he's able to also, I think, drawing the walks too. He's walking by far at the highest clip. He's almost doubled his walk rate from the last 3 seasons at 14.5% here, while cutting down the strikeout rate. It seems like he's just comfortable in the box too.
So much fun to watch right now. Brian Reynolds currently sporting a 27-game on-base streak. And over the course of that 27-game on-base streak, he's hitting 367 with an 1141 OPS. Yes, he's walking. He's got 15 walks in his last 27 games. But this is 98 at-bats that we're talking about, 116 plate appearances, and he's got 17 extra base hits. He's driven in 19 in his last 27. There are some guys, especially with on-base streaks, where it's like, okay, you go 0 for 3 with a walk and you keep this thing alive. Like, very similar to what Jung-Hoo Lee did during his hitting streak. Like, it wasn't a cheapy hitting streak where he hit 310. He hit 500 over the course of that 18 or 19 game hitting streak that Lee was on. With Reynolds, I mean, this is an on-base streak that is running through the tape and then some right now. Got about a minute left on this segment, but yeah, you have to think that Reynolds is playing himself into all-star consideration in a loaded National League outfield situation, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's getting on base at a 400 clip. So yeah, it's got to be part of the conversation here. He's nearly 50% above league average here. I think he's been, again, one of the more underrated performers so far this season, especially with the lineup the way that it's been. I think it's easy to forget how good he has been and how close he's been to that breakout season.
I love it. All right, so Brian Reynolds, Alec Boehm, Carson Benj, Wyatt Langford, Tyler Soderstrom. I'm missing one guy, Jack Caglione of the Royals. That's who we talked about in terms of really turning it on after slow starts. We will step aside on the Just Baseball show. We've got some other topics that we want to hit on the back half. On SportsGrid, you'll get a normal break, but on the JB show, let's hear from Hampton Farms. Who doesn't love
now?
who doesn't love their Hampton Farms peanuts? There were a couple of comments about the color correction the other day. It was just hilarious to read those. It's like just a little bit cloudy there, but you know what? Such a fun commercial. Just Baseball Show continues. Jack and Aram, of course, Peyton here with us as well. You'll hear from Hampton Farms a little bit later on in the program as well. We just talked about the turnaround and kind of the standout performers after slow starts. Now we want to talk about prospects. You've got a whole bunch of guys you got dialed in right now. This is your blank canvas, man. You got 10 minutes. Take us wherever you want to go prospect-wise.
I love it. And also, I want to say I noticed one more thing on Cags. He's not doing it every at-bat, but I wanted to shout this out. If you notice open side, Bobby Witt Jr., before the pitch will come in, he'll do like a little kind of turn inwards to just kind of engage his back hip. It's ever so slight, and you can notice it. Cags will be doing that now every once in a while. I think especially deeper into counts or when he thinks he's going to get a breaking ball to really engage that backside and hold it because he tends to be a bit of a drifter. And I thought that was interesting, given that Bobby Witt's his teammate, having that same kind of checkpoint to have that coil feel the same way that Bobby Witt does. So I had to shout that out before we go into the prospects. But I'm very excited to talk about some of these guys that have been performing. I want to start with a guy that we discussed on the Just Baseball Show today, and it's Cade Anderson. On the call up today, and it's Cade Anderson. Anderson has been outrageous this year. And we were talking about it. Like, he seems like a guy that is rehabbing, like an established big leaguer that is rehabbing in the minor leagues with how advanced he has been on the mound. And what's so fun with him is that all 4 pitches, he's flipping in for a strike at a consistent clip. He's dominating within the zone. It's a 41% strikeout rate. He has one of the longest scoreless streaks we've ever seen really in the minor leagues at 27 2/3 innings. And this is doing it in Double-A. You know, this is doing it in the Texas League where it is hard to keep the ball in the yard. Opponents are slashing 152, 187, 205 against Anderson with a 41% strikeout rate, and they're hitting below 100 against his slider. He's allowed 7 extra base hits all year. So to see that, I mean, it is just ridiculous stuff. And does the stuff in itself like jump off the page? Not necessarily, but every single pitch is above average or better. Couple plus pitches still as well. And the ability to execute, locate, command, the strikeout to walk numbers are crazy. I know, Jack, we just touched on that too on the call up.
Yeah, 100%, man. Cade Anderson, the strikeout to walk by month has just been egregious, and egregious in a good way. And we were talking about this with Cade Anderson. It's not like this guy has had a blip in the radar month and then he's just settled right back into form. This guy, who is riding a 27 2/3 inning scoreless streak over his last 5 turns, in April, 4 starts, 30 punch outs and 4 walks. In May, 5 starts, 37 punch outs and 3 walks. And so far in 3 starts in June, 23 punch outs to 1 walk. Just crazy to see this kind of stuff from Cade Anderson, who is not even the highest ranked pitching prospect within the Seattle Mariners organization. He's your number 10 prospect on Just Baseball's Top 100 update. Ryan Sloan, his rotation mate with Double-A Arkansas, is number 5. So just crazy stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of pitching talent coming up to a team. And we just talked about, like, it's going to be interesting to see how they create space for these guys. A guy that's making his way up through the minor leagues as well is Rays outfield prospect Theo Gillen. And Theo Gillen has just continued to mash. They promote him to Double-A. He has been one of the better performers, period, in the minor leagues this year. Their first round pick in 2024, already 12 homers, 28 bags. I think this is one of the more electrifying power speed combinations in the minor leagues. 342, 449, 589 slash line. It's good for a 166 WRC plus. And when he was drafted, he was an infielder. They've moved him to the outfield. His speed is shining through there, and it looks like he could potentially play an above average center field as he continues to settle in there. But the biggest thing for me with Gillen is that he is really getting into the power as well, especially in the air. His average exit velocity on batted balls in the air is 95 miles per hour. He also is running a chase rate south of 20%. So you have this hard-hitting ability, you have this patience, you have solid contact rates, like good enough, I think better than the strikeout rate would imply. And then, again, the power and angles to all fields. If he can prove to be an above-average center fielder, which I still think can be in his game, Theo Gillen has a chance to be one of the best prospects in baseball, period. Last note on him, he's hitting .407 over his last 20 games at high A before the promotion with a 195 WRC plus. again, I think Gillen's going to be one of the top rated prospects in the sport. He already kind of is trending in that direction. But by the next updates and by the end of season, I think this is a guy we're looking at as a top 10 prospect in that race system and a top 10 prospect overall, excuse me.
One of these guys is going to work out at some point. Like I understand Carson Williams hasn't really worked out to this point, and they've had a couple of other prospects that, have come up and fizzled out a little bit. Caminero, that was not the case whatsoever with Junior Caminero. But Gillen, like you have to think this is one of those prospects that is going to come up and show out at some point for the Tampa Bay Rays. But it seems like their hit rate is a little bit lower than you would expect from a team as well-oiled as the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of their guys, huge upside, have some deficiencies. When you look at Gillen now, I think the biggest deficiency has been health historically. And here he is, available, stacking games, and looking healthy and consistently being in the lineup, which is really big. An arm, and I think an arm in an organization that could really use one. Joseph Zerwa has been awesome, a top 100 prospect for us as well. Second round pick in 2025. He has been nails in AA. And Zerwa, funky look. We picked him as a breakout guy, as one of our breakout prospects, because of the fact that he added a couple ticks. This was a fastball changeup, 6'7" lefty that had built-in deception to find his success. You add a couple ticks to that fastball and you add a slider, and all of a sudden, you're going to have a little bit more success. And he had a slider before, but it's just a totally different pitch. The shape's different and the velocity's up multiple ticks. Instead of it being this taste breaker, it's a legit good pitch. He added a cutter as the bridge. And so that really makes a big difference, right? You have the fastball changeup that you already had. The fastball's better. The velo separation's better from the changeup. The slider's sharper, and you add this bridge cutter. No wonder this guy, who's actually now 6'8", according to the most recent measurements, is having the success that he is having. And it's been fun to watch the pure dominance. When you look at strikeout to walk, he's been as good as anybody in the minor leagues. So far this season, 91 strikeouts against 16 walks. In 73 and a thirds innings between high A and double A, he's pitched to a 2.33 ERA, and he has barely been touched for a long ball. 2 homers on the season because of the heaviness to his stuff, the deception built in, the command being there as well. At worst, this looks like a back end of the rotation piece for the Orioles.
He throws like somebody in the big leagues, and I'm trying to figure out who it looks like. Like the first name that came to mind was Hagen Smith of the White Sox. He totally has some Hagen Smith to the delivery, but there's somebody else, and I just can't put my finger on who exactly it is, where it's like super whippy and kind of upright too.
Peyton said Tim Herron. That is a good shout.
Yes, that's exactly who I'm thinking of. Like there was just a classic tall guy that the body stayed still, yet super whippy.
Set super closed.
Yeah, right? Like kind of Dolander on the right side. Like Dolander did that where it's like his body was upright and the arm was just moving a million miles an hour. Hagen Smith is like, I think the slam dunk comp, but Herron, yes, that's exactly who I was thinking of. I was like, I know I've seen that delivery before.
It does look very similar. Another guy that I am still skeptical as to whether it will translate to the big leagues, but I would be dishonest. I would not be a pro if I don't shout him out, because he has been balling out. And we got a lot of flack for leaving Joshua Baez off of our top 100 list and our update. And the guy had a 4-homer game. Now, so did Hogan Windish in 2024 in AA. And you might say who and exactly, but this is in AAA, 4-homer, 7 RBI day. I still have concerns as to whether Josh Baez's swing is going to translate. It kind of feels like the Christian Campbell thing again, where I also got killed for that. But at the same time, he has been so darn productive. The Cardinals prospect has 9 homers in his last 20 games. And that's not fair, actually, because if I go to 23 games, he has 14 homers in his last 23 games at AAA. Yes, he's striking out. Yes, he expands his zone a little bit. But this is a player now where he's getting the game power so consistently at the AAA level. We need to see it at the big league level and see if it's going to translate. I don't think it is. I think the swing's too stiff, but he has been unbelievable to watch. The bat speed and the explosion there is there. And there's so much excitement as to what could be if it does work. So I want to find out. The Cardinals are rolling. This could be a guy to ride the hot hand with, and I hope we see him up at the big league level, because 14 homers in 23 games is stupid at any level, especially AAA, though. So I want to see this guy in the show.
First, they go with Blaze Jordan getting up to the big leagues, and now possibly Joshua Baez. Chaim Bloom is cooking, dude. If you are not tapped into what Chaim Bloom is doing in St. Louis, get on board the Chaim train right now, because it is awesome. You got a couple more guys you want to talk about, or should we pivot to the Astros after the break?
I do have a couple real quick if we want to do it
All
on
right.
the other side.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that on the other side of this break.
Are you ready for el verano más futbolero de tu vida? Latin Nation Football Club turns into Copa Nation, our live stream experience every day de lunes a viernes, 11 a.m. Pacific and 2 p.m. Pacific as well. Checking in after the games. In that slot between games, we got you, my friend. We're going to have celebrities, legends of the game, content creators, and a bunch of our friends that are going to keep you entertained and informed, letting you know what's happening all across the 3 countries that are going to be experiencing this crazy, crazy football tournament. Don't miss it. Copa Nation right here on Latin Nation every day. Check it out.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Their pitching has been really good in their bullpen too. So Chris Getz, their general manager, credit to him. This guy was getting pounded a couple of years ago for decisions and everything like that, but man, it is seemingly working out. The fans, by the way, all of a sudden are pouring in there. Their attendance is on the rise too. So a great sign that the White Sox are in this thing. Now, long term, I don't know. Like, is this a postseason team? Is it a deep postseason team?
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Just Baseball Show continues. We were so rudely interrupted by a necessary break. But now we keep on going with our prospect segment. Aram, who else you got?
Josiah Hartshorn, the Cubs prospect. I think we've talked about him maybe once here in the past, obviously plenty on the call up. This was a 6th round pick in 2025 by the Cubs. They gave him over slot money, and I think it's looking real good. Young for the class. He's 19 years old until February, and this guy has not missed a beat. Switch hitter. Love the swing from both sides of the plate. And a guy that went from these advanced approach guys that go from low A to high A, it doesn't surprise me when they kick it into another gear at high A, because you have maybe the approach being rewarded more, not expanding as much. I think that's a really huge development for like guys. Typically they'll talk about like the advanced approaches. It's sometimes going to be more difficult to hit at the low A level because of the wildness of the stuff that they're seeing. Guys not really pitching to what their approach would tell them it will. So at high A, I don't think it's coincidence that in 24 games, you've seen Hartshorn hit 8 homers. He's hitting 349 with a 167 WRC plus at the high A level, because now his selectivity and his advanced approach is actually being rewarded more. 302, 421, 559 slash line on the season, 13 homers in 63 games, a 155 WRC plus. He was already well inside of our top 100 list, and he's going to keep flying up there. Corner outfielder that I think has really good ingredients as well. And then I got a shout out. I'm sorry. A Dodger and then one more Cub. I'll go Cub first. Owen Ayers has been one of my favorite stories. 25 years old, drafted in the 19th round in 2024 out of Marshall, signed for $50,000. He is one of the older prospects. We talk about will there ever be a top 100 guy that's like River Ryan's age? This might be the guy. This might be the guy, because we have a switch hitting catcher with plus power, a plus arm, that's just clearly a late bloomer. And this year in the Southern League in Double-A, 12 homers in 48 games. He's a 166 WRC plus. He's throwing out runners, and the swing looks great. There's some swing and miss in there, but I think his swing is built to slug consistently. The EVs are impressive. The fact that he can stick behind the dish, very late bloomer. But if you're giving me above average power, above average defense behind the dish as a switch hitting catcher with some patience in the box, like that's a guy that could be a multi-win player very easily. And then the last is Josue DePaula, Dodgers prospect. Look, I know people are going to say, oh, Dodgers prospects get too much love, blah, 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 blah. Josue DePaula might not be getting enough love. I was hard on him going into the year. I had some concerns about swing and miss against spin. He has completely calmed those concerns. He's got an OPS over 900 against spin and fastballs. He's turned 21 30 days ago, and the guy is has a 156 WRC plus in AA, slashing 321, 421, 557, 13 homers. He's also 19 for 23 in the stolen base department. He made some adjustments to be able to stay back longer, and now he's just living in the zone forever. This is a really fun blend of hit and power, and a guy that's going to be a big piece of, I think, the Dodgers' future.
We talked about the logjam in the Tulsa Drillers outfield of DePaula, Hope, Sirota. If Kendall George was healthy, you had too many outfielders to have at AA right now, and you're already paying Kyle Tucker $60 million a year for the next 4 years. You already have Pages in center, Teoscar Hernandez on an expiring deal, so naturally one of those guys probably going to be the answer in the corner outfield moving forward. I want to pivot this conversation to the Houston Astros right now because Dana Brown is apparently, the GM of the Astros, telling teams that he is in buy mode. He's not selling guys like Christian Walker, certainly no Yordan Alvarez, not Jeremy Pena. The Astros are currently 600-500. In the AL wildcard picture, they're 3 out of the final wildcard spot. Now, we're sitting here talking on June 23rd, but 600 means 3 out of the final wildcard spot. We have talked ad nauseum so far this year about how bad the American League is, and the Astros feel like they have an opportunity to pounce in a bad American League. Understandably so. It seems like Yordan is close to running away with an American League MVP, although Bobby Witt Jr. may have something to say about that when he, kind of sheds this MCL sprain that he's got going on right now. Yordan Alvarez playing like one of the best players in Major League Baseball. They're starting to get going offensively. And on the hill, they've found just enough. Like Imai is coming off of maybe his best start in his Major League career. Kaiwei Tang has been kind of newfound riches for them. Arrighetti, I know he had a blip on the radar the other start, but like Arrighetti's been good all season long. There's a lot going on in a positive direction right now for the Houston Astros. And all of a sudden, they're looking really frisky, and they may be involved at the deadline. What's your take on that?
I think it's more Crane than Dana Brown being in a contract year. I think it's just Crane saying, well, I'm going to have to find a new exec probably after this year, and I have no patience for rebuilds. I'm not doing that ever again. And that's the most fascinating part to me is just like, I think if you hired a consultant, like you do with a business, I think if you hired 10 of them would say, you should cash in on some of these chips that are going to be free agents. Yordan I could get. Hold on to him. I could understand that. But like Jeremy Pena, like a couple of these other pieces, Christian Walker, like that was a contract that we thought was immovable at one point. Like you can move it now for a team that loves to be under the luxury tax. Like this is an opportunity here. They don't want to do that. I get it with the American League Open, but even if this team sneaks in, great, you got Hunter Brown game 1. The heck are you doing after that?
Yeah.
And even if you can piece it together, what do you do if you make it to a 5-game set? I guess you could say at that point it was worth it, I guess. But is it if you have consistently now the worst farm system in Major League Baseball now for the next 5+ years? Like, how are you going to get talent back into the fold here? I appreciate them competing. And I think everybody being quick to sell is not a good thing for baseball. But just looking at the organizational health right now from top to bottom and like the lack of pitching that they're going to have even coming up anytime soon. I just, even if you got to the playoffs, like what's your best case scenario? Arrighetti shoves in game 2. Peter Lambert gets the ball. I don't know what their plan is. And I just feel like they're setting themselves up for purgatory.
I'll tell you what their plan is. Kevin Alvarez for Tarek Skubal, straight up. Who says no? We'll see. It is Houston. I think Houston's your only system in baseball without a top 100 prospect, right?
Yeah, Nyans was close. Kevin Alvarez isn't far away, but yeah, they're the only system without a guy in there. And even if you say Nyans is adjacent, like he's the same value there, you have to trade your 2025 first-round pick to get anything, or your top IFA guy to get anything, and then you're going to be even more stuck. So if you're not going to sell, you probably should then buy to give yourself a better shot, but then you're even more purgatory. So do you just stand pat? This team has no shot standing pat, of actually doing anything in the playoffs. So I just don't really understand the approach is my thing.
I guess the approach is exactly what you laid out, where Dana Brown is trying to, GM for his job. And Jim Crane is saying, I don't have the patience to do what we did in 2014 and 2013 and stack up, number 1 overall picks. And then Springer and Correa and Altuve all get really good at the same time. So I don't know, man. It's tough, but We'll see what Houston wants to do. Again, they currently sit 6 under 500, 3 back from the final AL wildcard spot, and 3 back in the AL West. We will hear about college ball in a moment, but before that, peanuts.
I don't always do a great job of delivering it in the right way. I will admit that. But I think overall, when you're honest with people, they know they can trust you. That, I think the last thing you want to be is somebody who BS's people. And then they don't know if what you're saying is true, if you're manipulating them.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio. Only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Wembanyama goes to the park and plays chess against people. Like, I saw him come in with a book today. Yeah. He walked in with a book, Kevin. He had a bunch of books in his hand. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's the only NBA player that actually walks in with a book that actually read it.
Yeah. It's a good take. It's a good take. Yeah.
Shot of LeBron. Listen, I couldn't help it.
I knew that I was trying to cut you off before you said the name.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Hey there, it's your buddy Craig Carton. If you're trying to find out how to get all the great content that me and Tyrone Johnson give you every single day, here's Tyrone to tell you how.
You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and of course, Amazon Music as well. We're at all 4.
That's right. It's the Craig Carton Show podcast every weekday morning live at 11, replayed at noon on YouTube and on SportsGrid throughout the country. Check it out.
Little line change. No more Aram Leighton. It's Peter Appel to tie a bow on the Just Baseball show here today. Thanks for joining us on YouTube, on X, on Spotify, on Apple Pods, and of course on SportsGrid. Oklahoma wins the Men's College World Series final. They win Game 3 of the final against North Carolina, and Oklahoma takes home the Men's College World Series National Championship. Peter Appel, your overall takeaways from Boomer Sooners so far this year, or I guess not so far this year, this season, because the college baseball season has officially come to a close.
This was one of the most incredible runs that I have seen in my life watching sports. Now, I'm only 28 years old, but I believe it. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to break down their run and put it in perspective of other sports if you're not much of a college baseball watcher. Just on the surface, this Oklahoma team, they finished 11th in the SEC this year. 11th. In their final 10 games getting to the tournament, they went 3-7. Now, they earned a spot to this tournament, but they were kind of the March Madness equivalent of a 9-12 seed. And then what did they do? They beat the Citadel, who was a very solid team, and boat raced them. Then they beat 3 conference champions. Georgia Tech in the ACC, Kansas in the Big 12, and Georgia in the SEC. And they didn't just beat these teams. They won by a combined score of 107-41. And that's not even mentioning beating a ranked Alabama team as well. And then you get to the finals, where they take down a fantastic North Carolina team that won 50-plus games during the regular season, has an incredible ace in Jason DeCaro, who they put up 7 runs against. And they beat him 2 out of 3 by a combined score of 24-11. In college baseball history, there's only been one team that has lost 30 games in the regular season and won the national championship. That was Fresno back in 2008. But the difference between this Oklahoma team and that Fresno team is this Oklahoma team had a starting rotation of all freshmen. You just don't see that in college baseball. And a lot of props has to go to their manager, Skip Johnson, who their Friday guy for the first half of the season for Oklahoma threw only 1 inning in the tournament. They did a complete 180 of their team, buying into these freshman arms. In the regular season, Oklahoma had an ERA above 5. In the postseason, it was below 3. They hit 48 homers in their first 46 regular season games. In their last 19, 47 homers. To put it in perspective of an MLB team, this is basically the equivalent of last year's Cincinnati Reds when they went 83-79 and snuck into the final wild card spot in the National League. Those Reds lost to the Dodgers in 2 games. They got steamrolled. But imagine this. Those Reds swept the Dodgers. Then they swept the Phillies. Then they swept the Brewers. Then they beat the Blue Jays in 5 with Game 5 winning by a final score of 13-2. That is what we just witnessed. The 1985 Villanova basketball team is the lowest seed to win in March Madness. This was crazier. This is like the Suns sweeping the Thunder, beating the Lakers, sweeping the Spurs, and then beating the Knicks in 5. I know I'm hammering it down because this was truly one of the most incredible runs I've ever seen in sports, period.
Yeah. And listen, in terms of the societal impact, I don't know if it's as high as the 1985 Villanova Wildcats, right? I'm just not sure that it matches that. But I can hear what you're putting down, and the fact that they did it with that much youth. We've got about 90 seconds left in this segment, but that youthful impact here, obviously you hope the portal doesn't decimate the Oklahoma Sooners. And, we'll see, because NIL talks and the portal talks and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, man, if Oklahoma can keep this together, why can't they be a steam engine next year?
There's no reason that they can't. The problem was they weren't a steam engine during the regular season. That's why the run just is so unbelievably mind-blowing. And I also want to shout out Jackson Willits, who won Most Outstanding Player. He hit 500 during this tournament. And again, UNC was incredible. If we're talking about getting an NIL bag this offseason, Caden Glauber of UNC, one of the best seasons by a reliever that we've seen, again, as a freshman. He's going to get a ton of money, or UNC is going to entice him to stay. But really, this was just... it's the reason why I love sports.
Yeah.
What Oklahoma just did, because you can be the better team on paper, but who's best when we line them up? Who's best when the lights are brightest? And as the lights continue to get brighter, Oklahoma just got better. They only lost 1 game, beating opponents on average over their last 10 games by 5.4 runs. Unbelievable.
Craziness. And you know what? Credit to North Carolina. They are a heck of a college baseball program. And credit to Oklahoma winning the Men's College World Series. That'll do it on the Just Baseball Show. For Peter, for Aram, for Peyton, I'm Jack. Thank you all so much for joining us on YouTube, on X, on Spotify, on Apple Pods, and of course on SportsGrid. We'll be back to talk to you soon on the JB Show.